بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين محمد وعلى آله الطيبين الطاهرين اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. My dear sisters and my dear brothers, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Well, basically we have to practice what we preach. Remember, we said last week that for a Muslim speaker, if he is a male speaker, I would rather for him to acknowledge the sisters before acknowledging the brothers, as to show that we Muslims do respect women. Versus those who, when they talk, they only address the brothers without completely acknowledging the presence of the women. So, we were talking last week about the do's and don'ts. Today we will be, and last week also I shared with you a list of recommended books. I was told by, I think my son Sayyid Ali, he said that one of the members of our class had shared this list over the WhatsApp group, and I don't know if you got them or not. So those who did not have a chance to get the whole list of books recommended by me, please raise your hand. I recommended about 22 books for you to read. So this is called the Islamic resources. For me as a speaker, I would recommend that you read these books. They will definitely help you a lot in advancing your ability to basically communicate better with your audience over various of Islamic topics. So we also mentioned the Quran. And the top list is the Quran. I also mentioned something about the Quran, the translation. What is the best translation? I told you last week, and I still say, that I have checked many translations, and none of them were really so satisfactory. In fact, some of those translations have committed grave mistakes. Grave mistakes. Let me give you an example. Very simple example. Yusuf Ali, when he translates the ayah, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu la tattakhidhu اليهود والنصارى أولياء. Okay? So the ayah in Surah At-Tawbah, O you people, the believers, do not take the Jews and Christians as awliya. So what did he translate the word awliya? Awliya in the Quran in Arabic. What did he translate it? Friends. That's a big mistake. Big mistake. Because basically he is translating the Quran to say Muslims are not allowed to take Christians and Jews as what? As a friend. Doesn't that send a chilling message to non-Muslims that we're not supposed to befriend you? In fact, that is one of the gravest mistakes a translator would make. Awliya is not a friend. Awliya is plural. The singular is what? Wali. What is wali? Wali is a leader, is a guardian, is a patron. Do not take Christians and Jews as leaders, as your patron. Rather take who? Take who? Allah. As a Muslim, my main allegiance is to who? To God. Not to Donald Trump, not to Salman ibn Abdul Aziz, not to Saddam Hussein, not to any individual. My main allegiance is who? Is to Allah. The Quran is warning Muslims, do not take any leader, any patron beside God. Now see the difference between between the word patron and friend. There's a huge difference between the two, friends and patron. Between when I say do not take Christians and Jews as patrons and leaders and someone you have your ultimate allegiance to, and between saying friends. Don't take them as a friend. You see the difference between the two? Huge difference. Huge difference over what? Over misinterpreting the word awliya. Where this came from? Where this mistake came from? Why Yusuf Ali, who's a why he is an extremely educated person, why he would make this mistake? Exactly. This is the issue. The Prophet in the last Hajj, he declared Ali ibn Abi Talib to be what? Man kuntu mawlah fahadha aliyun mawlah. The Prophet said that. Sunnis agree on this. That the Prophet himself said, whomever I am his mawla, Ali is his mawla. Now, what does mawla mean? In order to dilute the significance of this hadith and the significance of Imam Ali's leadership after the Prophet, some Sunnis resorted to interpret the word mawla as what? As a friend. Whomever I'm his friend, Ali is a friend. Versus whomever I'm his leader, Ali is his leader. They didn't want to admit that. So they basically twisted the meaning of mawla from something magnificent, which is leader, to something petty, which is what? Friend. Now, Yusuf Ali fell in this trap. When he was interpreting this ayah, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, do not take the Jews and the Christians awliya, because he interpreted the word wali as friend there, he cannot be hypocrite again and make it correct here. He had to be consistent to the falsehood he created and his friends created. So what did he do? He interpreted the word awliya there as what? As a friend. You see? So, when it comes to translations, I do not rely on any of those current translations. In addition to that, there is so much thee, thou, and it takes you 500 years back. They do not use any contemporary, language, modern language, English language. But as I said, I would recommend the one by Mir Ali and Mehdi Pouya. Now, nowadays, luckily, you do not have to carry the Quran with you all the time. Why? Because now we have the apps. So now you can have the Quran, you can refer to the actual Quran, or you can go to the app. So there are a few apps. I use for the translation an app that is, it comes with a green, what is called? I don't know, Sayyid Ali, how do we show them this one?
The icon?
Huh?
The icon?
The icon, yes.
You can send that to the group as well.
Okay, we will send you this to the group as well. So I would suggest for translation, you use this icon. It's simple, Arabic and English, very simple. So anytime you want to refer to this translation, it's in the app, have it in your iPhone or smartphone, and then you don't need really to go to the actual book, the actual translation. You can go to the app. Yes?
Some apps aren't available on Android. Is that app available on Android?
I don't know. I'm not expert in that. Maybe someone else can answer that question. So I am not sure what's available for Android.
All right, can you see what the name of the app is?
What's the name of the app, Said Ali? Do you know which one I'm using?
It looks like iQuran.
iQuran? Yeah. Maybe. So I don't know. Yes, it's called iQuran Lite. Lite with Lite. iQuran Lite. So I would recommend this as translation. So I recommend Quran Light, iQuran Light. I recommend this one. So go to it. It's nice. It's good.
Brother, are you in the chat? The group chat? Good. So we can discuss it. We can send out the apps, like the link to download.
Okay. Now, in addition to Quran, you need to have access to tafsir al-Quran. Interpretation, Quran interpretation. Now in Arabic, I can tell you a long list of interpretations, Quran interpretations. Long list that varies from deeply philosophical to mildly philosophical to youth-friendly interpretation, educated-friendly. There are all kinds of Quran interpretations if we go to the Arabic library. But the problem is I'm not sure which one of those have been translated to English. There is a publishing house in Iran called Ansarian. So, publishing house. They have translated most of the Shia books, including tafsir. So I would refer to Ansarian publications and find out which one of those tafsirs are translated. However, I know for sure that one particular tafsir has been translated into Quran, into English, and that is Al-Mizan. Al-Mizan tafsir, it's 20 volume in Arabic. It is 30 volumes. Is that what you said, Sayyid Ali, the other day? Around 30 volumes in English. And it has been translated into English. And one of the best in tafsirs, the author of Allama Tabatabai, he's a towering Shia figure. And it is an excellent, however, I have to warn you that a little bit sophisticated. Not little bit, a highly sophisticated tafsir. It needs a huge background in philosophy, in history, in other fields of knowledge. So if you do not have that background, it might be a little bit difficult for you to fully understand Al-Mizan. But as far as sophistication, I can say this is number one. No doubt this is number one. Al-Mizan is number one. It was written by one of the most famous Shia scholars of the modern age, Allama Tabatabai, who passed away maybe 20 years ago. And he's a towering figure. He is a big philosopher, and he is a big jurist, and he is a big mufassir, meaning he is an interpreter of the Quran. Yes, sister.
By tafsir, do you mean commentary?
Well, not commentary. Tafsir is different than commentary. Commentary just to make comments or footnote. Tafsir, no. I explain and interpret and dissect the ayah verse by verse. So, I'm sorry? Exegesis of Quran. So basically the job of interpreter is much bigger than the job of commentary. Commentary, you just put a few footnotes here and there. No, this is much deeper than commentary. So, but basically, you don't have to refer always to Al-Mizan. Go and find a translation. One of the best tafsir that I use, very simple, short and sweet, in Arabic though. Again, I'm not sure if it's been translated. I would appreciate if someone would tell me if it's been translated or not. It's called Majma' al-Bayan. Majma' al-Bayan for Tabrasi. It is one of the best tafsir I found. Majma' al-Bayan. It's by Tabrasi, who passed away 300 years ago. Tabrasi. And another one, very modern tafsir, that I know it's been translated into two languages, Arabic and English. Arabic and Farsi. I'm not sure if it's been translated into English, and it has been authored by a towering figure who is still alive. His name is Makarim Shirazi in Qom, and his book called Al-Amthal, Tafsir Al-Amthal. If it's been translated, I would recommend this one for you. If it's been translated, I will definitely recommend Al-Amthal, Tafsir Al-Amthal by Makarim Shirazi. So it's one of the best. So, speaking of Tafsir al-Quran, when I'm about to give a speech, I'm going to quote the Quran. And in order for me to quote the Quran, I have to be able to grasp and understand the meaning of the ayah I'm going to, discuss. Because Quran is a book that if you do not read and study the tafsir, the interpretation, you could be lost. There could be more than one interpretation. And we, as Muslims who follow Ahlul Bayt, who are obligated to always stick to what? To the interpretation given to us by Ahlul Bayt. Because we cannot make up our own interpretation. Quran, to make it very simple for you, the Constitution of the US. The Constitution of the US. You and I can read it, but sometimes there could be a dispute over certain part of the Constitution. When there is a dispute over the Constitution, and when we want to know if this is constitutional or not, who do we refer to? Do we refer to grocers and supermarket owners, with all due respect to them, to cab drivers, or we go to people who are known to be constitution scholars, people who spend 30 years just studying the Constitution. And then when there's a dispute, we take the dispute to the Supreme Court that will interpret this part of the Constitution and figure out if what I am referring to is legal or not legal according to the US Constitution. In other words, only scholars can really give you a true definition of what this meant in the Constitution. Same thing in the Quran. Quran was sent by Allah to the Prophet. So we have a book and we have an interpreter. The book is, the text is the Quran. The interpreter is who? The Prophet, obviously. But in his absence, who would fill in his shoes? Obviously, it is his family. It's not anybody. It's not anybody's job just to interpret the Quran. It's not up to you or to me to interpret the Quran. There are certain frames and standards with which you can interpret the Quran. Otherwise, I will be making my own false interpretation of the Quran if I just rely on my own personal understanding. So, having said this, we always need to refer to the basically legitimate interpretation of the Quran, and that is always given to us by the family of the Prophet. You had a question?
Yeah, the book Amsal, is it the same as Tafsir Namuna?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. In Farsi it's called Namuna. In Arabic it's called Al-Amthal.
A part of it, like not entire, there are some paragraphs missing, but that Tafsir is available on al-islam.org.
Okay. I'm sorry, sister, what is your name?
Zainab.
Sister Zainab is telling us that Al-Amthal is available over Al-Islam.
.org, and it's known as Enlightenment Commentary.
Islam.org?
Yes.
Okay. And under what name?
It's in 20 volumes, and it's Enlightenment Distribution.
Okay. So Alhamdulillah, Sister Zainab helped us by telling us that Al-Amthal is available, with the exception of few maybe paragraphs.
Yeah, a few
In
paragraphs.
20 volumes, it is available on alislam.org. So I refer you.
It's called as an enlightening commentary into the light of Holy Quran.
Enlightening
Commentary
commentary
into the light
Into the light, the life or light of the Quran. Light of the Quran. So basically, I refer to this one. In my opinion, this is the most modern interpretation. Meaning, it's very good for educated people, college graduate, because it is written by a very modern style and by a very open-minded scholar in Iran, and I would refer you to this book. Okay. Can I erase everything? Now, the second source that we need is what? Any guess? The second source we need is hadith. When I'm talking about any Islamic subject, I need to boost my talk, my argument, first by verses from the Quran, second by what? By hadith. From who? The Prophet and his family. Because we Shia believe that the family of the Prophet, let me take you back a little bit so I can shed some background on this. In the Shia Islam, there are four sources of Sharia. Four sources of Sharia. What do we mean by that? Please listen to this carefully. Meaning, as a mujtahid, as a scholar, if I want to extract any Islamic law, where do I refer to? Do I refer to New York Times? Answer me. No. What does the New York Times has to do with Islam?
Nothing.
Huh?
New York Times has nothing to do with Islam.
Okay, so where do I refer to? What is number one source I need to refer to? Quran. Quran is number one source. If I am about to find any Islamic law and extract any Islamic law, my number one source will be what? Would be Quran. Okay, because Quran is my primary source in finding Islamic laws. Now, the problem is, in the Quran, there are 6,000 plus verses. Out of 6,000 verses, only 500 verses talk about what is halal and what's haram. Only. So that means 5,500 verses deal with various issues, social issues, theological issues, and so on and so forth. Only 500, meaning of all Islamic laws, you know how many Islamic laws are there? You know? Just, huh? At least 15,000. At least 15,000. At least 15,000 Islamic law. Okay? So out of 15,000 Islamic laws, I can find the reference for those 15,000 in what? In only 500 verses. Meaning only 500 verses in the Quran talk about what is halal and what's haram. The rest of the 15,000, 14,500, I need to find them where? Somewhere else, I'm going there. So, number one source, the primary source of Islamic laws, or any Islamic law, if you want to know what Islam says about something, the first reference would be what? Killing innocent person. The first and primary source I need to go to and cite is what? Quran. If someone would argue with me, no, it is okay to kill an innocent person, where do I go to prove to them that they are wrong? Quran. So Quran is number one. But the problem is, because Quran is not only an Islamic law book, you may ask me then why? Why Allah did not talk about 15,000? Well, if Allah wanted to talk about 15,000 laws, the Quran would be tenfold of what it is now. And that was not the mission of the Quran. The Quran is not a book specialized in Islamic law. The Quran is specialized in what? What is the main goal of the Quran? Book of guidance. Guidance, not Islamic law. Not Islamic law. Part of it Islamic law. But the main goal of the Quran to be what? Book of guidance. Not a book of chemistry or physics. Not book of medicine or history. Rather Islamic guidance. All those subjects come as secondary. History, physics, anything else would come secondary. The primary goal of the Quran is what? Guidance. To guide Muslims to the right path. And because the primary goal of the Quran to guide Muslims, only 500 of the verses were dedicated for Islamic laws. And the rest of the verses, the rest of the 6,000 were dedicated for something else, for other subjects. So, but I'm still looking for, I'm supposed to find what is halal and what is haram. So I go to the Quran as my primary source. If I find it there, I go where? If I find it there, that's fine. If I don't find it there, where do I go? To the hadith. That's the job of the hadith, to tackle other issues. That's why most of those 15,000, most of them, I can say maybe 14,000 were found in the where? In the hadith. The sayings of the Prophet and the sayings of Ahlul Bayt. Because we take the sayings of the Prophet seriously. As well as the sayings of Ahlul Bayt, the 12 Imams, plus Fatima al-Zahra. Because we believe, the Shia system believes that the 12 Imams plus Fatima are all extension of who? Prophet. So they don't, whatever they say it narrating from the Prophet. They don't make up anything from their own. They narrate from the Prophet. So whatever one of the 12 Imams says anything, in fact it is a hadith of who? The Prophet, narrated by that Imam. When Fatima al-Zahra tells us something, whatever she tells us, it is in fact a narration from her father, Rasulullah. So whatever the Prophet said, Fatima al-Zahra plus the 12 Imams, meaning the 14 individuals, this is called the hadith. So I have to refer to the hadith of the prophets and Imams. Now, if I don't find it in the hadith, so Quran is number 1, hadith is number 2, 3, if I do not find it, I go to the consensus of Muslims. It's called ijma', consensus. And I'm sorry on the spelling. What's the spelling of consensus? Nobody knows?
I know.
Huh?
C-O-N.
C-O-N-S-E-N-S-U-S.
S-U-S.
Okay. Consensus. Ijma'. Whatever the entire Muslim community agreed on, we take it as Islamic law. Why? Because we believe that it's impossible that 1.6 billion Muslims all agree on something wrong. It's possible half of them would agree on something wrong. It is possible 60% of them would agree on something wrong. It is possible that 70% of them would agree on something wrong. But it's impossible that 100% of Muslims, all Muslims, would agree on something wrong. So if something that all Muslims agreed on, I take it as Islamic law. Example. Wine. Wine is haram in Islam, right? Drinking wine is haram. I may have difficulty finding it in the Quran. There are verses in the Quran discouraging Muslims, but it stops short from saying it is literally haram. But where do I find it? In the consensus of all Muslims. If you ask any Muslim, any individual Muslim, big or small, young or old, educated or uneducated, what do they tell you? That consuming wine in Islam is what? It's haram. Unless someone who's cuckoo, I have nothing to do with him. But if we're talking within mainstream Muslim, no Muslim says it is halal. So that's consensus. The last source, we said 4 sources our scholars use. The number 4 is intellect. Help me with intellect. I-N-T-E-L-L. intellect, aql. Let me give you an example. How we use aql to prove something or to disapprove it from Islamic point of view. So, at the time of the Prophet, when people needed to travel, what did they use? They used donkeys, camels, horses. Was there an A350 Airbus at that time? Was there? Answer me, please. Okay. Was there a, let's say, Toyota car? There wasn't, right? Did it exist? Okay. Was there our brother? I'm sorry, I forgot your first name.
Me,
Yes.
I go by Hassan.
Hassan, our dear brother Hassan is from a country called South Korea, right?
Yes.
So South Korea is known to produce what car?
Kia and
Kia. It's very famous here in America. So was there a Kia car at the time of the Prophet? Now I'm about to buy a Kia. In fact, there is a dealership for Kia by my house. So if I'm going to buy a Kia car, the question comes, am I permitted by Islam to buy a Kia car? Okay, how do I justify that? It could be haram, right? Could be haram. So how do I know it is halal or haram, even though it did not exist?
It's a means of transportation.
I know it's a means of transportation, but how would I know that Islam would okay it? It didn't exist at the time of the Prophet and the Imams.
So there is no hadith,
No hadith,
and there's
no Quran, and there is no consensus.
and intellect tells us that it's not.
Exactly. My intellect tells me Allah is merciful, right? And Allah, if wants something to be outlawed, He would have told me. So since He didn't tell me, but you will tell me that, how would He tell you about Kia 14 centuries ago? Tell you Allah, did Allah knew that Kia is coming or not? Did He knew that Airbus A350 would be coming or not? Allah of course knew. If He didn't want me to buy or ride any of these cars or airplanes, He would have told me. Since He didn't tell me, that means it's okay. So in the day of judgment, imagine an imaginary scene. God tells me, why did you buy Kia? And I tell God, so what? Don't you know it's haram? No, my master, I don't know it's haram. No, it is haram. I will tell God, how would I know it's haram if you didn't tell me? If you didn't want me? Look, when you take a street, it's one way, and there is no sign whatsoever, and the police stops you. Can he give you a ticket? No. Because if he gives you a ticket, what do you tell him? What is the sign? How would I know? But if there is a sign, he will say, look, that's the sign. You didn't see it. You didn't look at it. The city, before enforces one-way street, what do? They post a sign. Without posting a sign, it's not moral for the city to charge you, to give you a ticket without telling you that this is illegal. They have to post a sign, make you know that it is illegal, then they can hold you accountable. Without doing that, they cannot do this. Unless we're talking under Saddam Hussein or Saudi Arabia, where it is completely chaos. The government can fine you or give you a ticket anytime, any minute they want. No, we're talking about under, normal circumstances. So one of the sources of Islam is intellect. Our scholars will tell us, go ahead and buy Kia and buy, go and board airplane A350, A380, no problem with that, because if God had an issue with that, He would have told us. Since He didn't tell us, that means it's okay. Okay, now let's go. I just gave you a brief, what time is it? I just gave you a brief glimpse on how the Islamic law works. And the reason I brought this up, because hopefully in the future you will be Islamic preachers and speakers. You needed to know how the Islamic law works and how the Islamic law is enacted. Now, Quran number 2, we said, after looking for what I need, I am making A speech on, for example, giving, charity. So the first source would be Quran. Number 2 source would be what? Hadith. Okay? So I go to the hadith and I quote the hadith in support of my topic from the hadith. So that's number 2. Where also I need to go to support my talk is to go to stories. I need stories. Where do I find these stories? Various books, various historic books. I'm going to bring an example on how charity is important. I can go there. Here in this one, I can use what? New York Times. I can give an example on how such and such guy donated all his wealth for a philanthropic reason or cause. And by this story, I am encouraging my audience to follow the suit. So stories, wherever I can get the stories from, any source would be nice. Stories could be found in historic books, in contemporary books, in memoirs, in newspapers. I can listen to NPR and I can get that anywhere. I need to refer to stories. And also I need what? Number 4, I need examples. I need lots of examples. When I give a speech, I need to refer to lots of examples. Wherever I find the example, I go for it. So basically, I am looking for 4 major things. When I'm talking about a topic, I refer to the Quran, to the Hadith, to the stories, or book stories, and books of examples. That's one thing I need to mention to you. Can I erase? Okay. Another thing I need to bring to your attention, as a speaker, you need to have a background. You hear the word background. Background. You hear the word background. My background is sociology. My background is computer science. What does that mean? It means my specialty. My specialty. I have some specialty. Now, as an Islamic speaker, you should have a background in what? In your topic, Islamic speech. So what does that involve? In order to have background in Islamic speech, I need to read plus study. Read plus study the following. 1, I need to read a lot of what? History. Because speakers refer to history a lot. Why history is very important, my dear brothers and sisters? Why? Why history is extremely important for us? For me as a Muslim speaker, I need to refer to history. Look, there is a saying, very true saying. It says, history, what? Repeat itself. That's very true. Always history repeats itself. What do we mean by history repeats itself? Literally? No. Literally, history doesn't repeat itself. The theme of history repeats itself. Meaning, history is like a movie. You run a movie, but with different players. So, for example, the battle between Imam Hussein and Yazid was a battle of what? Justice against injustice. Now, is this confined only to Imam Hussein? Meaning only at the time of Imam Hussein, injustice and justice were fighting? No. Anytime, even during our time, justice and injustice are in constant fight and collision. At the time of Imam Hussein, 1400 years ago, the embodiment of justice was what? Hussein. The embodiment of injustice was who? Yazid. Now it could be someone else. Not Yazid, but for example, Israel, or the government of Myanmar, or it could be those who are bombing Yemen people. So basically the theme is the same. An oppressor is oppressing the innocent. At the time of Yazid, the oppressor was Yazid. The oppressed were Muslim masses. And the method was the sword and poison. Now the oppressor is, say, Israel. And the oppressed are the Palestinians. And the method is no longer the sword, rather bombs and bullets and so on and so forth. So basically, history repeats itself. The theme of history repeats itself through different actors. That's why very important to study the history in order to what? To shed light on the presence. When I study and read history, in fact, I will be inspired by history to learn lessons, with them I can fight injustice right now. So basically, history is nothing more than a mirror. You see in the mirror, you see yourself. You see yourself in the mirror. That's how history's relationship with the present. It's a mirror. What happened in the past is happening right now, but through different actors. That's why reading history is very important. You have to spend time in reading Islamic history and world history. Islamic history and world history.
Is there a specific part of history that we can focus on in Islam?
Well, I suggest that you focus on one. A brief world history. Brief. Now, there are several books written about that. I know many in Arabic, many. But in English, you can go to Twimby's book. He's a British author. He wrote the history of a human history. And I think that's by Twimby, it's a very important book. Well Durant wrote a book. I have the Arabic version. It is called قصة الحضارة. In English, I think it is the story of civilization. So by Well Durant, it's maybe 25 volumes. I encourage you to read those or part of those. There are some brief books. One of them is by Nehru, Jawaharlal Nehru, the Prime Minister of India, some 60 years ago. He wrote a brief history of humanity. One volume. I would recommend that you read that book. And when it comes to Islamic history, there are also many books. But in the Arabic world, the most famous one is Al-Tabari. Al-Tabari is the most famous historian in the Muslim civilization. Having said this, it doesn't mean that Tabari did not make many falsehoods in his book. Why? Because Tabari's book was commissioned by who? There is a saying, says the history of the world was written by who? By victors. Victors write the history from their own perspective. That's why, as I mentioned last week, Christopher Columbus is considered to be what? A superhero in this country. Why? Because all you heard about him from the side of the victors. But if you go and read about him from the side of the victims, you will find out that he was one of the major terrorists, one of the biggest terrorists of a human history. So Al-Tabari wrote Islamic history according to the desire of the rulers. That's why so much falsehood. Let me give you an example. He goes year by year. He says these are the incidents that took place, just very similar to the British encyclopedia. But he goes by the Arabic year, Hijri year. So he says in this year, which I think 202 Hijri, I'm not very sure now. He says in this year, This happened, this happened, this happened. And then he says in this year, Tabari says, listen to this. He says in this year, وَفِي هَذِهِ السَّنَةِ مَاتَ عَلِيُّ بْنُ مُوسَى الرِّضَى. In this year, Ali ibn Musa, he's not a Shia though. He says Ali ibn Musa al-Ridha died. Who is Ali ibn Musa al-Ridha? Our Imam. So, listen to what he says. وَكَانَ سَبَبُ مَوْتِهِ أَنَّهُ كَانَ يُحِبُّ أَكْلَ الْعِنَبِ فَأَكْثَرَ مِنْ أَكْلِ الْعِنَبِ حَتَّى مَاتَ. He says the man used to love eating grape. He ate so much grape till he died. Have you ever heard someone dying of eating grape?
No.
Have you? If I eat so much grape, I'm going to die? Have you heard that? We have doctors here. Doctor, you tell us. Do you had any patient dying out of eating grape? Not yet. So how that's possible? The man was trying to cover up for crime committed by Ma'mun, who inserted poison in the grape and he fed it to Imam al-Ridha, and Imam died poisoned by the grape. So he doesn't want to tell us the truth. He's trying to cover up for the caliph by telling us he died out of what? Eating grape. See the fallacy? So Tabari is the most famous Muslim historians, but trust me, there is so much falsehood put up in his book because he was commissioned by the victors. They wanted him to tell us history from their side of view. A side that makes them look so shining, and you know what they call Harun. Harun, read about Harun. Harun is one of the Abbasi caliphs. Harun's era, Harun ruled for 22 years. You know what is called in Arabic? Any of you have Arabic background? Harun al-Rashid. What is his era is called? Al-Asr al-Dhahabi. The golden age. The golden age of Islam. Do you know what this man used to do? The guy who created the golden age? He used to build pillars, and inside he put his opponents, his adversaries, and he built the pillars on them. So inside, under each one of those pillars built, there are one person, innocent person, who died under that. This is the guy who created the golden age of Islam. You see how big the hypocrisy is? When the victor writes the history, he calls his era as the golden age of Islam. But in fact, if you read it from the other side, it was one of the darkest age of Islam when Harun was the one, when he was the caliph. So, history, I would suggest Tabari, but not believing in everything in what he says. Now, is there a Shia history? Well, they say Mas'udi. Mas'udi is another historian. He wrote a book, but don't be fooled by the word he's a Shia, because the word Shia in history 1,000 years ago was completely different what it means today. When we say she's a Shia or he's a Shia, what do we mean by that? We mean they follow the 12 Imams, right? But 1,000 years ago, anybody called Shia mostly was referred to Shia for loving Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib. So if you love Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib, look how crooked the mind of people was at that time. That only if you love Ali ibn Abi Talib, you're a Shia. What does that mean? That means the hatred for Imam Ali was so rooted in the Muslim society that if you don't love him, you're not Shia. If you love him, you're a Shia. If you love him only. Now all Sunnis love Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib. By that definition, all Sunnis are what? Shia. Today, all Sunnis, or I can say 99% of Sunnis love Imam Ali. By this definition, they are all Shia. Because again, back to the subject, history was written by victors. It was the ruling establishment who made up this, this phrase Shia, to consider any person loving Ali ibn Abi Talib to be Shia, so as to marginalize them. They are Shia. Get them out. They are Shia. to delegitimize them. So Mas'udi was not really a Shia in the sense that you understand. He was Shia, meaning that who was someone who loved Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib, which is something we call today a moderate Sunni. If you're a moderate Sunni, you love Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib, right? So Mas'udi was not 100% Shia, but he was a pro-Ali ibn Abi Talib. But I recommend his book if you can find the translation. Now, I also mentioned last week, can I erase this? So we said history. Number one, you have to have background in history. And background, we said in history. History number one. What else? You have to have some background. You have to have some background in literature. In literature. Literature, many of our Islamic narrations, history, was embedded in books of literature. For example, if you read a book in Arabic, it's a very famous book. It's called Al-Aqd al-Farid, Ibn Abd Rabbu al-Andalusi. Al-Aqd al-Farid, it's not a history per se. It's not a history. It's literature. But when you read Al-Aqd al-Farid, one of the best books I have ever read in Arabic, even though it's literature, but it is embedded with a lot of history. So the primary goal of Al-Aqd al-Farid is to teach you literature. But don't forget, to teach you literature, literature is a tool with which they use history, they use Arabic grammar, Arabic eloquence, and so on and so forth. So you need to also specialize in literature. Which one? The book? Al-Aqd al-Farid in English. It is the Aqd al-Farid. It is?
Yeah, the unique necklace.
The unique necklace. So the unique necklace, our sister Zainab says it is translated, and the name is the unique necklace. And that's exactly what Al-Aqd al-Farid means. The unique necklace. But this is
Is it by
Ibn Abd Rabb al-Andalusi. Yes. This is one of the books I refer you to. Literature. What else you need to also? Islamic laws. Now, as a Muslim speaker, I'm sure you will be exposed to the situation where people will come and ask you Islamic laws, even though you're not an expert in Islamic laws. But by default, because you're an Islamic speaker, people will come and ask you. Or if you want to yourself talk about an Islamic subject, how can you talk about it without having any background in Islamic laws? When I say Islamic laws, obviously, Islamic laws, learning Islamic laws have two ways. One, that takes you 30 years. And that is to what? To go to Qom or Najaf and study jurisprudence for 20 years, do some thesis and some researches, and it will take you 30 years. So you will become what is known as mujtahid, jurist. So then you become an expert in jurisprudence. But obviously this is not available for lay people. You cannot leave your job and business and livelihood and go to Najaf and specialize 30 years in jurisprudence. The most available choice for you is to what? To read. Read Risala. And every marja, as I referred last week, every marja, such as Sayyid Ali Sistani, Sayyid Abu al-Qasim al-Khou'i, Sayyid Muhammad Hussein Fadlallah, Sayyid Khamenei, each one of those individuals have written a Risala. Risala means thesis, his thesis in Islamic laws. A book that basically relate to us his opinions and his fatwas on various issues. Each marja has this. Now this risala could be put in a form of hardcover book. Just I showed you last week the Sayyid Sistani's book. Or you can go to their website. For example, Sistani, you go to sistani.com or arrafid.com and you get his risala there. Sayyid Fadlallah has a website called, I think, bayinat.com. You can go to his website and get his fatwa. Sayyid Khamenei, same. Every marja' nowadays has a website. You can just refer to his website. It says Islamic laws. And you can check his Islamic laws and read them there. Someone had a question?
30 years, that's like Hakam al-Shar, right?
Hakim al-Shar. Hakim al-Shar is a mujtahid, basically. Another word, another term for mujtahid, for jurist. So if you become jurist, by default you become Hakim al-Shar. Yes. Now, so I would recommend you take your respective marja', whoever marja' you follow. It doesn't matter. Any marja' you follow. See, the good thing about our school of thought is that the door for ijtihad is open for anybody. If you find yourself qualified to be a marja', it's open. You can just go and meet the prerequisite and become a marja'. So any of your marja', you go and take your respective marja' book and read them. Read them. Be equipped and knowledgeable about what your marja' says on various issues. Okay, so that's number, we got 1, 2, and 3. And time is, we have 3 more minutes. I talked about tafsir. I add 3 more things, 3 more things. One is psychology. Psychology 101. Please read some psychology. If you don't want to go and take it in the college, just buy the book and read it. And take also philosophy 101 and take sociology 101. Why those 3? Because nowadays, if you are a Muslim speaker, speaking in the West, you cannot just refer to histories that took place 14 centuries ago. You no longer can do that. You have to be contemporary. You have to sound modern. You have to sound knowledgeable about your current issues, including those 3. Now, Islam, science, and those 3 knowledges, fields of knowledge, philosophy, psychology, and sociology, they are intertwined. And in order for us to talk about various Islamic issues, we must have some background. You don't need to be an expert, but at least you have to have some background. And finally, you need to have some background on world affairs. World affairs. How do you manage to have some background on world affairs? Reading newspapers. Read the newspapers. My advice to you, read New York Times every day. That's what I do every day. It takes me at least 2 hours to finish the whole newspaper, from cover to cover. I read it. And it helps me a lot in knowing what's happening in the world. I hardly watch TV. But my main source of the world affairs is newspapers, reliable newspapers. So if it's reliable to you, use it. If not, go and find another. Maybe USA Today, Guardian, whatever. I would recommend you commit yourself to reading a reliable source of news that reflects on world affairs on daily basis, 1 to 2 hours. So next week, my dear brothers and sisters, our topic will be building a speech. Meaning I'm going to go with you, walk you through building a speech. How do we build a speech? Next week's topic will be building. I'm going to do it in front of you. How do we build a speech? Then the following week, I need volunteers. So next week, I will show you how to build a speech. In other words, how do I prepare for my speech? I'm talking about myself. I'm going to teach you that practically. I will walk you through building a speech. And then for the following week, inshallah, we will pick volunteers, 3 volunteers. So next week, I need 3 volunteers, brothers and sisters, or sisters all, or brothers all. But no, that doesn't work. Must be at least 1 sister and 2 brothers. I'm not going to go with 3 brothers only. So at least we have to have 1 sister, at least, and 2 brothers. Or 2 sisters and 3 brothers. But if 3 sisters will volunteer, I will accept that. So for next week, I need 3 volunteers. Not for next week. I need their names for next week. So the following week, they have to perform 5 to 7 minutes speech here. So if you're a little shy, okay, you don't have to volunteer for the following week. You can pause, but I'm sure we will have at least 3 people willing to volunteer to speak for the following week. But inshallah, for next week, I will go with you and build a speech before your eyes, and I tell you what are the tools needed to build a speech, and then we make up a speech made of 7 to 10 minutes, inshallah. Any question? صلوا على محمد وآل محمد.